I am Darcy Nelson, 35 years old, and CEO of the tech company my family dismisses as my little hobby. Tonight, after 5 years of estrangement, I accepted an invitation to the annual Harrington Family Gala, hoping my success might finally earn their respect. Instead, I sit alone in my car, tears burning down my cheeks, my hand violently trembling as I open my banking app. "Get this beggar out." My father sneered to the entire room, his disgust palpable as security gripped my arm. What he does not know is that I now own the very venue where they celebrate. Before I continue my story, let me know where you are watching from in the comments. Hit that subscribe button if you want more stories about standing your ground against toxic family members. Growing up in our sprawling Connecticut estate, I never lacked material comfort, but warmth was another story entirely. Our family home was a showpiece of wealth rather than a haven of love. The marble floors echoed with the sound of my father's expensive leather shoes as he paced analyzing stock portfolios and making deals that would increase the family fortune. My father, William Harrington, was a controlling investment banker who demanded nothing short of perfection from his children. His philosophy was, simple success meant following his exact blueprint for life, and any deviation was considered failure. When he smiled, it was usually at a business associate or my brother James, never at me or my creative ideas. Mother Eleanor was a socialite whose primary concern was maintaining appearances. Her calendar revolved around charity galas and country club luncheons. She avoided conflict at all costs, which meant she would never defend me against father's criticism. Instead, she would look away, pretend not to hear, or change the subject to something more pleasant. James was the golden child who followed perfectly in father's footsteps. Top of his class at Yale, then straight into investment banking. Father beamed with pride at his every accomplishment, while my achievements went unnoticed or were actively dismissed. My sister Amanda was different, but equally difficult. She competed for father's approval relentlessly, which made her see me as competition rather than an ally. When father criticized me, she would pile on thinking it elevated her position in the family hierarchy. The only person who ever truly saw me was my grandmother Elizabeth. In her private study, away from my parents' watchful eyes, she would ask about my interest in computers and business. "Different isn't wrong, Darcy," she would tell me. "Sometimes different changes the world." After she passed away when I was 16, I lost my only ally in the family. Despite the emotional coldness, our family name opened doors. The Harringtons were old money with a reputation that stretched back generations. Our annual gala was a tradition, a display of wealth and power that local politicians, business leaders, and socialites clamored to attend. The venue for this display was always Westbrook Manor, a historic mansion that had been in our extended family for generations. Its grand ballroom, sweeping staircase, and manicured gardens were the perfect backdrop for my father to showcase what he valued most: status, wealth, and the illusion of familial perfection. When my cousin Sophie called with an invitation to this year's gala, I was genuinely surprised. "Everyone will be there," she said. "It might be a good time to mend fences." Sophie had always been kind to me, more like a sister than my actual sister. She knew I had built something substantial with my tech company, even if the rest of the family dismissed it. I spent days shopping for the perfect dress, something that said successful entrepreneur rather than family disappointment. I chose a midnight blue gown that was elegant without being flashy. In front of my mirror, I rehearsed the achievements. I would casually mention the major clients my company had secured, our expanding international presence, the innovative software we had developed. As I drove toward Westbrook Manor, memories flooded back. Summer afternoons playing hide and seek in the gardens with Sophie. The Christmas when grandmother gave me my first laptop. Even a few rare moments when father seemed proud, like when I won the state science fair in 8th grade before he decided my interest in technology was a waste of time. Westbrook Manor itself was a character in our family story. The limestone facade, the 300-year-old oak trees lining the driveway, the ballroom where generations of Harringtons had celebrated their triumphs. It was more than a building. It was the physical embodiment of our family legacy. What no one knew was how closely I had been following the family business over the years. Despite being cut off financially when I chose to study computer science instead of finance, I had made it my business to understand our family's holdings, investments, and properties. Knowledge had always been my power. As I parked my car at the edge of the property, I took a deep breath. Tonight was about showing them that I had succeeded, despite them not proving I needed their approval. At least that was what I told myself as I stepped onto the gravel driveway, the familiar crunch beneath my heels, both comforting and anxiety-inducing. The moment I stepped through the grand entrance of Westbrook Manor, I noticed subtle signs of neglect that would be invisible to most guests. A hairline crack in one of the marble columns, slightly faded upholstery on an antique settee, paint that had begun to peel in one corner of the ceiling's ornate molding. The Westbrook I remembered had been immaculately maintained with my father, personally overseeing every detail of its upkeep. "Darcy, you actually came." My cousin Sophie rushed over, genuinely happy to see me. Her warmth was in stark contrast to the other relatives who glanced my way with poorly disguised surprise. "Is that Darcy Harrington, Aunt Patricia?" whispered to Uncle Robert, not quite quietly enough. "I thought William said she would not be attending." Mother approached with the practiced smile she reserved for social obligations. Her embrace was stiff, her perfume overwhelming. "Darcy, dear, that dress is interesting. Perhaps next time we could shop together for something more appropriate for a family event." Before I could respond, she was already leading me toward a group of distant relatives performing the role of the devoted mother for their benefit. "My daughter has been so busy with her work. We hardly get to see her these days." I sipped champagne and made small talk, all while noticing the undercurrent of tension in the room. Staff members moved quickly, looking slightly harried. Normally, they would be perfectly choreographed at these events, but tonight their movements seemed hurried, almost anxious. The prodigal daughter returns. James appeared at my side, champagne flute in hand, his custom tuxedo impeccable, as always. "Still playing with your little tech hobby, or have you finally realized real money is in finance?" "My little hobby just signed a multi-million-dollar contract with Meridian Global One," replied, keeping my voice neutral. "How are things at Harrington Investment Group?" A flicker of something crossed his face before he manufactured a smile, expanding. "Father is announcing a major partnership tonight. Something that will take the company to the next level." Before I could probe further, Sophie pulled me aside. "Listen, I should probably warn you. Uncle William wasn't thrilled when he heard I invited you. He actually tried to uninvite you yesterday, but I told him the invitation had already been sent." My stomach tightened. After 5 years, nothing had changed. Why is he announcing a partnership at the family gala that is usually reserved for the corporate event next month? Sophie hesitated. "Things have been complicated. I probably should not say more." As dinner approached, I discovered my name card placed at the furthest table from the main family seating, tucked away in a corner with distant cousins and their plus ones. A clear message about where I stood in the family hierarchy. Uncle Philip, father's younger brother, who had always been kind to me, stopped by my table during the first course. Good to see you, Darcy. Heard your tech venture is doing well. He glanced around and lowered his voice. Between us, it is good you found success outside the family business. Things haven't been as rock solid as William pretends. Before I could ask what he meant, Father tapped his glass for attention, and Uncle Philip hurried back to his seat. Throughout the elegant five-course meal, I continued to gather information. The caterers were new, a cheaper service than the renowned chef who had handled our events for years. The wine, while still fine, was not from the exclusive vineyards Father had always insisted upon. Small details that painted a concerning picture. Amanda slid into an empty seat beside me during dessert. So, little sister, tell me all about your company. Father mentioned something about you working in customer service for some tech firm. Her smile was sweet, but her eyes were calculating. I founded and run the company actually. We specialize in cybersecurity solutions for financial institutions. I kept my explanation simple, knowing her interest wasn't genuine. How fascinating, she said, clearly, not finding it fascinating at all. Will you be staying for Father's big announcement? He has saved the family business, you know. Not that you would have been concerned about that having abandoned the family and all. As she walked away, I felt the first stirrings of understanding. The family business was in trouble, and tonight's announcement was about its salvation. I thought back to the signs of neglect around the estate, the cost-cutting measures, evident in the catering and beverages. During coffee, I overheard a conversation between Father and a distinguished-looking man I didn't recognize. The partnership will ensure the Harrington name continues to command respect in the industry, Father was saying. And of course, Westbrook Manor will be central to our new venture. The man nodded appreciatively, surveying the grand ballroom. It is a magnificent property, William. The historical significance alone makes it priceless. A knot formed in my stomach as I began to suspect what the partnership might entail. If the family business was failing, Westbrook Manor would be one of their most valuable remaining assets. But surely Father would not risk losing the estate that had been in our family for generations. As the dinner plates were cleared away and guests began to mingle again, the undercurrent of anticipation grew. Whatever Father was about to announce, it was clearly the focal point of the evening, and somehow, I felt certain it would reveal exactly how dire the family's situation had become. The crystal chandelier light reflected off the champagne glasses as servers prepared for the toast that would accompany Father's big announcement. Watching him work the room with his practiced charm, I was transported back to my 17th birthday when I had proudly presented him with my first business plan. I had spent months researching, creating financial projections, and developing a prototype for a simple security application. While other teens asked for cars or exotic vacations, all I wanted was his guidance and perhaps a small investment to help launch my idea. The tech industry is a playground, not a career, he had said, tearing the business plan in half without even reading beyond the first page. Harringtons build lasting legacies in finance, real estate, and investments, not chasing digital trends that will be obsolete next year. When I decided to major in computer science instead of business or finance, he made his disappointment abundantly clear. You are choosing to walk away from everything I built for you, he told me the night before I left for college. The next day, I discovered he had canceled the tuition payment. My trust fund, which had been promised for education, was suddenly inaccessible. I worked 3 jobs while maintaining a full course load. Waitressing in the mornings, campus tech support in the afternoons, and developing websites for local businesses at night. While classmates joined clubs and went to parties, I survived on 4 hours of sleep and instant noodles. My first real startup operated out of a tiny studio apartment where I slept on a pull-out sofa. When I secured my first major client, a regional bank that needed enhanced security protocols, I could finally afford to rent a small office space. I called Father to share my success, but his secretary said he was unavailable. He never returned the call. 2 years ago, James had called me out of the blue. His voice lacked its usual condescension as he awkwardly asked about my company's performance. Then came the real reason for his call: he needed to borrow money. Not a huge sum by our family's former standards, but substantial nonetheless. He swore me to secrecy, especially from Father. I transferred the funds immediately, telling myself it was a business loan, but I never expected repayment. He sent a generic thank you text, and we hadn't spoken since until tonight. Now circulating among the guests, I picked up fragments of conversation that painted a troubling picture of my family's financial state. The Harrington summer house in the Hamptons sold for well below market value, one woman whispered to another. Eleanor had to resign from 3 charity boards, said another. Claims she's overcommitted, but we all know the truth. Father caught my eye across the room but quickly looked away, turning to a group of business associates. James and Amanda have both been instrumental in our new direction, he was saying loudly enough for me to hear. All my children understand the importance of family legacy. The pointed exclusion was deliberate. Mother cornered me by the dessert table, her smile fixed, but her eyes anxious. Darcy, dear, would it kill you to dress and behave more appropriately? This partnership is crucial for your father. Please don't do or say anything to embarrass us. As I walked toward the bar, one of the servers, an older woman who had worked Harrington events since I was a child, discreetly touched my elbow. Good to see you, Miss Darcy, she whispered. Things aren't what they used to be. Staff haven't been paid properly in months. Your father keeps promising the money is coming after tonight's announcement. Sophie found me moments later, her expression troubled. Uncle William is putting everything on this partnership. The family has been selling assets for 3 years, ever since the Meridian investment went bad. I nearly choked on my drink. Meridian. My company just signed a contract with them. Uncle William refused to adapt to changing market conditions, Sophie explained. The loss was catastrophic. This partnership is a last resort, but he is spinning it as a strategic alliance. Across the room, I noticed a man observing our family dynamics with shrewd eyes. Impeccably dressed, but clearly not from our social circle, his analytical gaze followed Father's movements with the calculation of a predator assessing prey. That is Harrison Wells, Sophie whispered, following my gaze. The potential partner. He owns the largest property development company on the East Coast. My brother-in-law, Thomas, Amanda's husband, joined us with his usual tactless approach. Well, if it isn't, the computer girl. Still playing with coding while the adults handle real business, women in tech. It is like watching a child play with toys while pretending to work. Sophie shot him a disgusted look while I maintained my composure. Those toys built my multi-million-dollar company, Thomas. How is your position at James's firm working out? Still waiting for that promotion Father promised you. His face reddened as he stalked away, and Sophie stifled a laugh. He is still just a vice president, while James got fast-tracked to executive status. Amanda is furious about it. Needing a moment alone, I slipped away to the library, my childhood sanctuary within Westbrook Manor. The familiar smell of old books and leather furniture had always brought me comfort. On a side table sat a collection of family photos in silver frames. I picked one up, a recent Christmas gathering, from the look of it, and noticed immediately that I had been excluded. There were several such photos, all taken during my estrangement, all carefully displayed to create the narrative that I didn't exist. As I replaced the photo, A document on the desk caught my eye. Partially covered by other papers, the letterhead was still visible, Wells Development Corporation. I shouldn't have looked, but something compelled me to slide the paper out just enough to read the title, Proposed Acquisition of Westbrook Manor and Surrounding Properties. The door opened suddenly, and I quickly stepped away from the desk. Harrison Wells himself entered, appearing unsurprised to find me there. "You must be the mysterious third Harrington child," he said, his tone casual, but his eyes sharp. "Your father hardly mentions you." "Darcy Nelson the First," corrected him using my professional name. "I left the Harrington name behind some time ago." Nelson. Recognition flickered in his eyes. Not the same Nelson who founded Securitech Solutions. Before I could answer, Father appeared at the doorway, his face hardening when he saw us together. "Harris and the guests are assembled for the announcement. Darcy, this is a private conversation." As I passed him in the doorway, he gripped my arm tightly, his voice a harsh whisper. "Do not interfere with what you do not understand." I wrenched my arm away. "I understand more than you think. You are selling Westbrook, aren't you?" The momentary flash of panic in his eyes confirmed my suspicion. 6 months ago, I had heard rumors through industry connections that Westbrook Manor had been quietly placed on the market. At the time, I couldn't believe Father would sell our family's most treasured property. Now it was clear he had no choice. The library confrontation left me shaken as I rejoined the gala. The pieces were falling into place, painting a picture of a family in financial freefall, desperately trying to maintain the illusion of prosperity while selling off their heritage piece by piece. And Father was about to announce the sale of Westbrook Manor, the heart of the Harrington legacy, while spinning it as a triumphant partnership. What he didn't know, what none of them knew, was that I had been watching these developments unfold from afar. When Westbrook had secretly been listed, I had received an alert. The historic property that held my few happy childhood memories, the estate my grandmother had loved, was about to be carved up into luxury condos by Harrison Wells's development company, unless someone stepped in to preserve it. The grand ballroom fell silent as Father tapped his crystal glass with a silver spoon. His commanding presence, a skill honed over decades of business dealings, drew every eye in the room. Standing tall in his bespoke tuxedo, he presented the image of success and confidence that had defined him throughout his life. Distinguished guests, beloved family members, he began his voice carrying to every corner of the ballroom. For 6 generations, the Harrington name has been synonymous with excellence, integrity, and strategic vision in the business world. I stood at the back of the room, my heartbeat quickening as I anticipated what was to come. Mother and my siblings flanked Father on either side, a unified family front that pointedly excluded me. Tonight we celebrate not only our proud heritage, but an exciting new chapter in the Harrington legacy. A chapter that will secure our family's prominence for generations to come. His practiced smile revealed nothing of the desperation I now knew lurked beneath. A true family legacy, he continued, is built upon supporting worthy endeavors that create lasting value. It requires recognizing opportunity and having the courage to evolve with changing times. The irony of his words wasn't lost on me. This was the same man who had ridiculed my foresight about the tech industry, who had dismissed digital innovation as a passing trend while clinging to outdated business models that had ultimately failed him. I am pleased to announce a special partnership between Harrington Investment Group and Wells Development Corporation. Together, we will transform this historic property into an exclusive residential and commercial complex that honors its heritage while embracing the future. Gasps and murmurs rippled through the crowd. though he was framing it as a partnership anyone with business acumen could read between the lines. This wasn't a collaboration, it was a sale disguised as a joint venture. Harrison Wells and I share a vision of preserving the essence of Westbrook Manor while maximizing its potential. Father gestured toward Harrison, who nodded graciously from his position near the front of the crowd. The Harrington family will maintain a meaningful stake in this exciting new venture. A meaningful stake likely meant a small percentage, and perhaps naming rights, nothing more. The manor where generations of our family had celebrated milestones would become luxury apartments and boutique retail shops, with the Harrington name attached merely as a marketing tool. As applause filled the room, I felt a surge of determination. This might be my only chance to speak with Father before the deal was finalized. I made my way through the crowd, as he accepted congratulations, waiting for a moment when he was relatively alone. "Father, could I speak with you privately?" I asked, keeping my voice low and respectful, despite the anger simmering beneath the surface. He barely glanced my way. "This is hardly the time, Darcy. I am in the middle of important business discussions. It is about Westbrook. I have information you should know before finalizing this deal." His expression hardened. "What would you know about real business? You have been playing entrepreneur with your little computer programs while I have been managing a corporate empire." Several nearby guests turned to watch our interaction, sensing conflict. I persisted, lowering my voice further. "My company has grown substantially. In fact, we recently secured a contract with Meridian Global." At the mention of Meridian, the company whose investment had apparently triggered the Harrington financial decline, Father's face flushed with anger. "Always seeking attention, aren't you? Are you here for handouts now that you have heard about our new venture? Did you think you could claim a share after abandoning your family responsibilities?" His voice had risen, drawing more attention. James and Amanda exchanged smirks, while Mother studiously examined her champagne glass, refusing to meet my eyes. "I don't need handouts," I said evenly. "My company is valued at over $200 million. I simply wanted to discuss Westbrook's future." Father's eyes flashed with a dangerous combination of disbelief and rage. "200 million, You expect me to believe your little hobby is worth that much? Always exaggerating, always begging for validation and attention." The room had grown uncomfortably quiet as more guests turned to watch the confrontation. Harrison Wells observed with undisguised interest. "I am not begging for anything," I maintained, struggling to keep my voice steady. "I only wanted to talk about alternatives to selling Westbrook to developers." Father's composure shattered entirely. "Get this beggar out of my sight," he spat loud enough for everyone to hear. "Security, escort my daughter out. She is not welcome at this family event." Two security guards materialized beside me, one gripping my arm firmly. The room was absolutely silent now, hundreds of eyes watching my humiliation. Mother turned away completely while James whispered something to Amanda that made her snicker behind her hand. "Uncle William, this is ridiculous." Sophie stepped forward, her face flushed with anger. "Darcy has every right to be here." "Stay out of this," Sophie Father snapped. "This is family business." "Darcy is family," she protested, but her father gently pulled her back. The security guards led me through the stunned crowd, past distant relatives and business associates who had just witnessed my public shaming. The mortification burned through me like acid tears threatening to spill, despite my determination to maintain dignity. Outside in the cool night air, I stumbled toward my car, the security guards watching, until I was off the property. Inside the vehicle, the dam broke. Tears streamed down my cheeks as 5 years of estrangement, decades of rejection, and the fresh wound of tonight's humiliation crashed over me. My hands trembled violently as I opened my banking app, the familiar interface blurring through my tears. The notification banner at the top of the screen read, "Final payment processed, Westbrook Manor acquisition complete." 3 months ago, when I had confirmed that Westbrook was secretly for sale, I had created a shell company to make an offer through intermediaries. My representatives had negotiated directly with the bank that held the increasingly burdensome loans against the property, bypassing father entirely. The sale had been finalized this morning, but the bank had agreed to delay notifying the Harringtons until tomorrow as a professional courtesy. Father had just announced a partnership that could never happen. He had sold a property he no longer owned, and he had no idea that the beggar he had thrown out was now his landlord. The realization hit me with the force of a physical blow. I owned everything they were celebrating in. The ballroom where father had just humiliated me, the gardens where mother had hosted her garden parties, the library where James and Amanda had plotted their ascent in the family business. All of it now belonged to me. A complex storm of emotions surged through me, rage at years of dismissal and tonight's public humiliation. Vindication that my little hobby had given me the power to save our family's heritage when they could not. Grief for the family relationships that might never heal, and an undeniable sense of power knowing that with one phone call I could bring their entire celebration crashing down around them. The choice before me was stark. I could drive away letting them discover the truth tomorrow when the bank notified them, or I could return and confront them with the reality of their situation. I could walk away from the toxic family dynamic forever, or I could force them to acknowledge me at last. My finger hovered over my phone's contacts, ready to call my driver to take me home. Then, father's words echoed in my mind. "Get this beggar out." After a lifetime of seeking his approval, of hoping for just a fraction of the recognition he lavished on James, this was how he saw me, as someone beneath him, someone to be discarded and dismissed. I started the car, made a decision, and pulled out my phone. "Taylor, it is Darcy," I said when my executive assistant answered. "Is everything finalized with the Westbrook acquisition?" "All documents were processed this morning," Taylor confirmed. "The property transfer is complete. The bank agreed to notify the previous owners tomorrow as requested." My hand steadied as I gripped the steering wheel. "And our legal standing is clear. There is no way to contest the sale." "None whatsoever. The loans were in default, the bank had full authority to sell, and our offer was clean. Remember why you bought it, Darcy. You said it was to preserve your family history, not to use it as leverage." Taylor's gentle reminder gave me pause. When I had first discovered Westbrook was for sale, my motivation had been preservation. The manor had been the setting for my few happy childhood memories, particularly time spent with my grandmother. I could not bear the thought of it being demolished or carved into luxury condos. "You are right," I acknowledged. "This isn't about revenge. It is about protection." After ending the call, I took several deep breaths, composing myself. I applied fresh makeup, fixing the mascara streaks on my cheeks. The reflection in my rearview mirror showed a woman who had built herself up from nothing, who had earned every ounce of her success. I did not need to beg for validation from people who had never supported me. I stepped out of my car with purpose, not anger. At the entrance, the same security guards who had escorted me out looked uncomfortable when I approached. "Ma'am, I am sorry, but Mr. Harrington has instructed us not to allow you back inside." "I understand you are doing your job," I said, opening my purse. "However, there has been a significant development." I handed him a business card and a folded document. "I am now the legal owner of Westbrook Manor. You can verify this with the estate manager, Mr. Phillips." The security guard's eyes widened as he read the document, which summarized the property transfer. I will need to confirm this, ma'am. Of course. He spoke quietly into his radio, and minutes later, Mr. Phillips, who had managed the estate for 20 years, hurried toward us. His expression shifted from confusion to shock as I explained the situation and showed him the legal documentation. "This is unexpected, Miss Harrington," he said, scanning the paperwork. "But it appears to be in order. The property is indeed yours." "Thank you, Mr. Phillips. I plan to address the gathering inside. Would you accompany me?" With the estate manager beside me and the security guards now deferential, I re-entered Westbrook Manor. The gala was still in full swing, with Father in the center of the ballroom raising a toast to the new partnership with Harrison Wells. Both men held champagne flutes, their expressions triumphant, as photographers captured the moment for the society pages. The room quieted as guests noticed my return. Father's face darkened with fury as he saw me walking confidently toward the center of the ballroom, Mr. Phillips at my side. Before he could speak, I addressed the room in a clear, steady voice. "Ladies and gentlemen, I apologize for the interruption. There has been a misunderstanding regarding tonight's announcement." Father stepped toward me, his voice a threatening whisper. "Security? I thought I made myself clear." Mr. Phillips intervened. "Sir, there has been a development you should be aware of." I continued addressing the crowd. "The partnership being celebrated tonight between Harrington Investment Group and Wells Development cannot proceed as announced. The reason is simple. Westbrook Manor is no longer owned by the Harrington family." Murmurs rippled through the audience. Mother's champagne glass froze halfway to her lips, while James and Amanda exchanged alarmed glances. As of 9 o'clock this morning, Westbrook Manor and the surrounding estate were acquired by Nelson Technologies, my company. The partnership you are celebrating is with me." Father lunged forward, his face contorted with rage. "This is absurd. A desperate attempt for attention. Perhaps you should check with First National Bank," I suggested calmly. "They finalized the sale this morning due to defaulted loans against the property. They agreed to delay notification until tomorrow as a professional courtesy, but the transfer is complete." Harrison Wells stepped forward, his expression curious rather than angry. "You are Darcy Nelson, CEO of Securitech Solutions." "I am." He turned to Father, his tone cooling considerably. "William, you never mentioned your daughter was Darcy Nelson. Her cybersecurity company is one of the most innovative in the industry." Father's face had drained of color as the reality of the situation began to sink in. Mother sank into a nearby chair, while James pulled out his phone, presumably to verify my claims. "I have the documentation here," I said, holding up a folder. "Westbrook Manor now belongs to Nelson Technologies. My company is currently valued at approximately 10 times what remains of Harrington Investment Group." The stir this created was immediate. Business associates who had been congratulating Father moments ago now looked at me with new interest. The beggar he had thrown out now controlled not just the venue, but a company worth far more than his failing enterprise. "This is some kind of trick," Father blustered, but the conviction had drained from his voice. "No trick," I assured him, opening the folder. "Just business. The kind you taught me to respect, though, perhaps not in the way you intended." James approached his phone, in hand, his expression a mixture of shock and calculation. "The bank confirms it," he said quietly to Father. "She owns Westbrook." The vindication was profound. After years of dismissal and tonight's public humiliation, watching recognition dawn in their eyes was a satisfaction I had never known. The family that had labeled me a failure, a beggar, now stood in a building I owned, surrounded by guests who were rapidly reassessing everything they thought they knew about the Harrington power dynamic. Harrison Wells broke the awkward silence. "Miss Nelson, I would be very interested in discussing potential collaborations between our companies. Perhaps we could arrange a meeting next week. I would be happy to have my assistant contact yours, I replied professionally. Though I should mention that my vision for Westbrook differs significantly from what was discussed tonight. I have no intention of developing this property into condominiums or retail space. Father finally found his voice again. You cannot just waltz in here and disrupt arrangements that have been months in the making. The Harrington Investment Group has contracts commitments. Any legitimate contracts will be honored, I assured him. But Westbrook Manor will not be part of any development deal. This estate has been in our extended family for generations, and I intend to preserve it. Mother approached hesitantly, her social mask firmly in place, but strain showing around her eyes. Darcy, dear, perhaps we should discuss this privately as a family. That would have been preferable, I agreed. Unfortunately, Father chose to make our family business public when he had security remove me from the premises. I addressed the room again. I apologize for the disruption to the evening's festivities. The gala may continue, of course. Westbrook Manor welcomes you all as my guests. The subtle emphasis on my was not lost on anyone in the room. As the stunned guests began to talk among themselves, creating a buzz of conversation throughout the ballroom, Father gripped my elbow and steered me toward a quiet corner. His public rage had transformed into something more controlled, but equally dangerous. Whatever game you are playing stops. Now he hissed, his face inches from mine. You have made your point. You have embarrassed the family in front of everyone who matters in our social circle. Is that what you wanted, to humiliate us? Interesting that you see it as humiliation, I replied, removing his hand from my arm. When you had me thrown out earlier, was that not intended to humiliate me? His strategy shifted instantly, his expression softening into something resembling paternal concern. Darcy, you have always been oversensitive. Perhaps I reacted too harshly earlier, but you chose an inappropriate moment to discuss business matters. The way I see it, I continued, unmoved by his manipulation. I simply corrected a factual error in your announcement. You cannot sell or develop property you do not own. If you truly built this company you claim is so successful, you understand business negotiations. Everything is flexible. We can come to an arrangement that benefits us both. His tone suggested he was doing me a favor by offering to negotiate. Any arrangement will need to go through proper channels. My legal team and executives will be happy to meet with Harrington Investment Group representatives next week. James approached his earlier mockery, replaced by barely concealed panic. Darcy, be reasonable. You cannot just swoop in and take control of family assets without discussion. I purchased Westbrook Manor through legitimate channels from the bank that held your defaulted loans. There was nothing to discuss. I met his gaze steadily. By the way, I am still waiting for repayment of the loan you requested 2 years ago. Perhaps we should discuss that. He paled slightly, glancing at Father. That was a private matter. So many private matters in this family, I observed. Private financial troubles, private property sales, private disdain for the family member who chose a different path. Sister Amanda hurried over her expression, a strange mixture of anger and calculated friendliness. Darcy, we have always been close, haven't we? Even through disagreements. Sisters should stick together. The audacity of her claim was almost laughable. Which sister are you referring to? The one who told my college friends I was on psychiatric medication when I chose tech over finance? Or the one who accidentally spilled wine on my laptop the night before my first investor presentation? She had the grace to look momentarily ashamed before recovering. We were young. Family dynamics are complicated. The important thing is that we are family, and family stands together. Mother finally broke her silence, though her concern was predictably misplaced. What will everyone think? The Harrington name will be dragged through the mud. The embarrassment of having our financial matters exposed like this. I have not exposed anything, I pointed out. Father announced a deal involving property he no longer owned. That was his choice, not mine. Uncle Philip approached his expression more curious than concerned. Impressive move, Darcy. I always said you had the sharpest mind in the family. What happens to the current staff? Some of these people have worked here for decades. His question was the first genuine concern anyone had expressed for someone other than themselves. All current staff will retain their positions with improved compensation and benefits, I assured him. Unlike some, I value loyalty and hard work. Father bristled at the implication. I have always compensated staff fairly. Is that why they haven't been paid properly in months? I asked. Another matter I plan to address immediately. Harrison Wells materialized at the edge of our family circle, observing the dynamics with the shrewd assessment of a businessman who had encountered countless family dramas in his career. Miss Nelson, I would be very interested in hearing your vision for Westbrook. While I respect family matters, the business potential of this property is still considerable. Before Father could interject, I turned to address Wells directly. Mr. Wells, I appreciate your interest. My vision for Westbrook involves preservation rather than development, but I would be happy to discuss potential collaborations on other projects. My company has been considering expanding into secure, smart building technology. Wells's eyebrows raised with interest. That is an emerging market with tremendous potential. I would welcome that conversation. He handed me his personal card, pointedly ignoring Father's attempt to insert himself into the exchange. The realization that business associates were now approaching me directly, rather than going through him, was clearly hitting Father hard. For a man whose identity was entirely wrapped up in his business acumen and social standing, this shift represented more than a financial loss. It was a complete upheaval of the power dynamic he had controlled for decades. I excused myself from the family huddle and approached the staff who were watching the unfolding drama with undisguised concern. Addressing the head butler, who had served our family for over 30 years, I said, Mr. Rivera, please inform all staff that their positions are secure and any outstanding wages will be paid in full by the end of the week. I would like to meet with department heads tomorrow morning to discuss operations moving forward. The relief on his face was evident. Thank you, Miss Harrington. The staff will be most grateful. Nelson, I corrected gently. Darcy Nelson. Returning to address the gathering, I spoke clearly enough for all to hear. I want to thank everyone for their patience during this unexpected development. The gala will continue as planned. Tomorrow, Westbrook Manor begins a new Chapter 1 that honors its history while securing its future. Father made one last desperate attempt to regain control, stepping forward with the authoritative presence that had dominated boardrooms for decades. The Harrington family business will continue its operations as planned. This minor setback regarding Westbrook does not affect our broader business strategy. I met his gaze steadily. You called me a beggar in this room. You had me physically removed from what you believed was your property. Now I own the room, and you remain only by my permission. The words hung in the air between us, a truth so stark that even Father could not summon a response. For the first time in my life, I saw something I had never witnessed in William Harrington's eyes: uncertainty. The man who had always had an answer, always controlled the narrative, found himself speechless. Mother looked stricken, James furious. and Amanda calculating all of them, suddenly aware of their complete dependence on my decisions. The family that had cast me out now found themselves at my mercy, a reversal none of them had ever imagined possible. With quiet dignity, I walked away from them, accepting congratulations from business associates who were rapidly adjusting their understanding of where power now resided. The sensation was not merely vindication but liberation, a breaking of chains I had carried since childhood. No longer would I measure my worth against their approval. No longer would I seek validation from those who had never truly seen me. As I stepped onto the terrace for a moment alone, the cool night air caressed my face. Stars glimmered above the gardens where I had played as a child, where grandmother had told me I could be anything I wanted if I stayed true to myself. For the first time, I fully understood what she had meant. True power came not from controlling others or accumulating wealth, but from claiming your own path and standing firmly in your truth. 6 months passed, bringing dramatic changes to Westbrook Manor and to my life. The estate that had once symbolized my exclusion from the family had transformed into a place of personal healing and professional purpose. The East Wing, previously used only for storage and occasional overflow guest accommodations, now housed a state-of-the-art technology incubator for underprivileged youth. Teenagers from backgrounds similar to the one I had created for myself without family support or financial resources came to Westbrook to learn coding, entrepreneurship, and business skills. Watching their eyes light up when they successfully launched their first app or secured their first client brought me joy that no business acquisition ever had. True to my word, I had retained all the loyal staff, many of whom had witnessed my childhood and had quietly supported me even when my family did not. Mr. Rivera, the head butler, who had slipped me cookies when father sent me to my room without dinner, now oversaw the estate with renewed pride. The gardeners who had taught me plant names when mother was too busy with social obligations now mentored incubator students in the Sustainable Garden Project. The family business required more difficult decisions. After thorough audits revealed years of financial mismanagement and several potentially illegal tax avoidance schemes, I initiated a complete restructuring. Harrington Investment Group would continue, but with ethical practices and transparent operations. Several board members resigned in protest, but those who remained acknowledged that the changes were necessary for survival. My relationship with individual family members evolved in unexpected ways. Cousin Sophie became a true friend and ally, eventually joining the board of my nonprofit foundation. Her genuine joy at my success and her unwavering support during the transition period proved that some family bonds were worth preserving. Mother's attempts at reconciliation were awkward but persistent. At first, she focused entirely on appearances, concerned only with what people would say about the family changes. But as months passed, I glimpsed moments of genuine remorse. During a private lunch in the garden she had once supervised with iron control, she confessed through tears, "I should have stood up for you. I always saw your potential, but I was too afraid of your father's disapproval to say anything." It was not the full accountability I had hoped for, but it was a beginning. Our relationship would never be the warm mother-daughter bond I had craved as a child, but we were establishing a tentative adult connection based on cautious respect. Father presented the greatest challenge. His initial rage gave way to calculated attempts to regain control, then to grudging acknowledgement of my business acumen. He struggled visibly with working under my authority, often leaving rooms rather than accepting direction from me. During one particularly difficult board meeting, he exploded. "I built this family's legacy. You have no right to dismantle everything I created." "I am not dismantling our legacy. I responded calmly. I am saving it from the destruction your practices were bringing. The choice is simple: adapt to ethical business standards or retire with dignity. Either way, the company moves forward. The father who had defined my worth by his narrow definition of success now had to confront a daughter who had succeeded beyond his imagination, without his blueprint and despite his obstacles. It was a reckoning neither of us had fully prepared for. James took longer to adjust than I expected. His identity had been so completely tied to being father's heir apparent that my sudden authority threatened his entire self-concept. Our breakthrough came unexpectedly during a late night at the office, reviewing acquisition proposals. I never understood why you walked away, he admitted after his third cup of coffee. I thought you were crazy to reject everything father offered us. He offered you everything I corrected. He offered me conditional acceptance if I became someone else. James stared into his coffee. He did the same to me, just in different ways. The golden child role comes with golden handcuffs. For the first time we spoke as equals, acknowledging the different ways our father's expectations had shaped and sometimes warped our choices. Perhaps most surprising was Amanda's evolution. After several months of transparent hostility, followed by obviously insincere flattery, she finally approached me with unexpected vulnerability. I was awful to you, she admitted during a rare private moment. I thought father's approval was a zero-sum game. If you got any, there would be less for me. Her genuine apology opened the door to a relationship we had never had as children. While we would never be best friends, we developed a mutual respect that allowed for honest communication. My own healing journey proved more complex than I anticipated. The vindication of proving my worth to my family provided temporary satisfaction, but did not fill the deeper void their rejection had created. True healing came through therapy support groups for adults with family trauma and building genuine connections with people who valued me for myself rather than my achievements or family name. I created a family of choice among friends, mentors, and colleagues who celebrated my successes without competition and supported me through challenges without judgment. Taylor, my executive assistant who had become a trusted friend, often reminded me to maintain perspective when business pressures mounted. Your company's success didn't heal your wounds, she observed one evening as we reviewed quarterly reports. It just gave you the resources to finally address them properly. She was right. Financial success had given me power, but healing required vulnerability. The little girl who had desperately sought her father's approval still existed within me, but she was no longer driving my decisions. I could acknowledge her pain without letting it determine my future. The deepest lesson emerged, gradually. True worth never comes from external validation, not from parents, not from siblings, not even from spectacular business success. Worth comes from living authentically, from creating rather than destroying, from lifting others rather than elevating yourself at their expense. The family that had labeled me a beggar had unintentionally given me my greatest gift, the necessity of finding my own path. In seeking to control me, they had set me free to discover strengths I might never have found in the comfortable confines of their approval. Forgiveness came not as a gift to them, but as a release for me. I did not forgive to absolve them of responsibility, but to free myself from the weight of resentment. The anger that had once fueled my drive for success gradually transformed into determination to create something meaningful with the power I now held. 6 months after that fateful gala night, I sat alone in Westbrook's rose garden, my grandmother's favorite spot on the property. The setting sun bathed the limestone walls in golden light, while students from the tech incubator laughed somewhere in the distance. For the first time in my life, I felt truly at home in this place that had witnessed generations of my family's history. The manner that had once represented my exclusion now embodied possibility, not just for me, but for young people who, like me, needed someone to tell them their different path might just change the world. The sweet satisfaction of vindication had evolved into something far more meaningful, the quiet joy of creation and renewal. Have you ever had to prove yourself to family members who dismissed your dreams? Comment below with your story. I would love to hear how you handled that challenge and what you learned from it. If this story resonated with you, please like, subscribe, and share it with someone who might need to hear that their worth isn't determined by family approval. Thank you for listening to my journey, and remember that sometimes our greatest strength comes from the very rejection that once caused us pain.